Alright, hello class. This is the video. It's going to start to go over the test review sheets for the stats and probability unit. I'm assuming you've already tried to match up the vocabulary, so for the vocabulary I'm just going to read through the answers for you. So the first one is quantitative data can be represented with numbers. Remember quantitative, you remember quantity, which is counting. So that's numbers. Categorical data is not represented with numbers. You think of the word category to remember that one. The definition of probability we learned is the chance that an event will occur. You cannot have a probability more than 100%. And same thing as that question is the next one. If you add the decimal probabilities, so not percent now, but decimals, you will add those up, they'll never be more than 1, or actually if you look at all the probabilities of the outcomes, they will equal 1, exactly 1. If you think about that mathematically, if you take 1 and convert it to percent, it would be 100%. If the chance of something happening is X%, then the chance of it not happening is called the complement. So the complement of something happening is everything opposite of the event that you're looking for. So if you said the probability of it raining was 17%, then the opposite, or the probability of it not raining, is just 100% minus 17%. So you can just find the opposite of some probability by taking its complement. An independent event is an event that is not influenced by a previous event. Think about independent. If you're independent from your parents, it means you don't need their help anymore, so they are no longer influencing you. And then a dependent event is an event that is influenced by the outcome of a previous event. If you talk about dependence, same example. If you're dependent on your parents, that means they're having to support you and take care of you. So there is a connection or an influence between you and your parents. A predicted probability found before doing an experiment is called theoretical probability. Think about a theory in science. It's something that you think is going to happen, but you haven't proven it yet by experiment. So theory, theoretical. The probability that actually happens when we do an experiment is called experimental probability. Think about that as, starts with the word experiment. That means you do an experiment, and from the experiment results, you'll get your probability. Let's go to the next column. Two events that cannot happen at the same time are referred to as mutually exclusive events. Two things that can't happen at once. Like if I told you that you're going to roll a die, what is the probability that that one roll will land on a 1 and a 2? It can't happen at the same time because they are mutually exclusive. Two events that have some outcomes which fit into more than one category are known as overlapping events. We did that example in class where we had students stand up with who had a letter in their first name that was a C. Then we had students that stood up and the letter in their first name could be I. And then when we had all those same students with C and I stand up, we found out that by adding the two groups together, we didn't get the sum total because some students fit into both categories. So that's considered an overlapping event. Marginal relative frequency is found by dividing a row or column total by the grand total. Remember, the word marginal means we are taking our numerator from the margins, which are the total columns found on either the right side of the two-way table or the bottom of the table. Joint relative frequency is found by dividing a frequency that is not in a row or column total by the grand total. Remember, we use the word joint to signify that the number we're using in the numerator of our relative frequency, it comes from the intersection of a column and a row. So the column and the row are being joined together, and that's where we get the word joint. Conditional relative frequency is found by dividing a frequency that is not in a row or column total by the total for that row or column. Remember, conditional relative frequency were the questions that typically had the words if, of, assuming, or given. So we're only looking at a particular row or a particular column in a two-way table. Definition of frequency. Frequency means how often an item occurs in a set of categorical data. It's just a count, how many of a certain in a certain category. For instance, how many shapes in a bag are green, and they're also a triangle, so the frequency of green triangles. Relative frequency, now we got to do some math. Relative frequency is the frequency of a category divided by the total frequencies. So now we're taking a number or a frequency and dividing it by the total count to get either a relative frequency, or it's also the same way that we figure out a probability. So there are the descriptions of the vocabulary words that you need to know for this upcoming test.